So, a short reading from Matthew chapter 25. I'm beginning to read at verse 31. When the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, he will sit on his throne. And all nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." So, Lord, we pray that you will take this time that we have together now, bless it and use it in your kingdom. Amen. So just to tell you, we're going to start off. People have about 10 minutes to speak. I'll introduce them. And then if you could save questions and comments to the end. So if you could please note them down as we go along. We'll have about 20 minutes at the end to share together. Our first speaker is Sam Worrell. Sam is the Criminal Justice Policy Officer at Friends, Families and Travellers. And Sam's going to talk to us about a project she's doing, talking about the impact of prison on young people. So over to you, Sam.
Hi, thanks, Nikki. Thanks for that. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to try and share my screen. Hopefully my connection will be all right. As you can see, I live on a boat and it's pretty windy here today. So I'm not always sure what my internet's doing. Right, share screen. Let's see if this works. Nothing's happening. Host disabled participant screen sharing. Why isn't it working? Not sure what's working. I'm trying to share my screen. Anyone got any ideas?
Sam, just try again.
Are you a co-host? Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Got it. I think that's it. It suddenly popped up. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully they can. Okay. Right. Camera off now, but never mind, because I was trying to get my bandwidth down, but let's see. Hopefully it'll be all right. Yeah, so basically I am working for Friends, Families, Travellers as a criminal justice policy officer. I've also done lots of health stuff in the past as well. So that's something else I'm very keen on kind of working on and continuing to work on. I just want to talk a little bit about the project that I'm working on at the young Gypsy, Roma and Traveller people in the criminal justice system. And this is a 2-year project and we're funded by the Barrow Cadbury Trust, who are a really amazing group of people who fund change for social justice and do a lot of work with the criminal justice system as part of their T2 Alliance, which is the Transition to Adulthood Alliance, which we are now part of. And this is what this project is looking at. There's lots of different organisations on that alliance, all representing or actually from the communities that who are from ethnic minorities, alliance that are working with Gypsy and Traveller and Roma communities. So it's really good. I'm not sure they've had an organisation that works with Gypsy, Roma, Traveller people before on there. So it's a really kind of good thing to be getting in with. So I'm just going to talk about the project so far. Obviously, we all know that Gypsy, Roma and Traveller people are massively overrepresented in the criminal justice system, and some statistics here that I'm sure many of you are familiar with from recent reports. And if anyone wants anything afterwards, obviously I can share data and slides with you as well. So yeah, they are massively overrepresented. 6% of the youth estate data, and obviously nothing really has changed since then in those years, despite being just 0.5% of the overall population in England and Wales. The one thing that we do know, of course, is that official records are undercounting people, because as we know, and as I've heard from people that I've spoken to so far on the project, so many people do not disclose when they enter the criminal justice system that they are from the Gypsy or traveller community, especially. So these voices, and you get to a prison, you speak to people, that you realise, you know, that the kind of depth of this issue. So there's been a lot of research on this subject anyway for older adults. Obviously, we're sort of concentrating on the 18 to 25 year group. The reason we're concentrating on that particularly is because there's even less information about this age group, and obviously it's quite an important age group, because if people are involved in the criminal justice system in custody, from youth settings up to adult settings and adult custody, the ages that people are being transferred, the support that they're getting, the experiences that they're having, obviously I should say lack of support that they're getting often, and the negative experiences that they're having as part of that journey and that transition to adulthood. But obviously we're also talking to friends and families of people who've been affected by the criminal justice system and their experiences of that, and also talking to older people from the communities who've been involved in the criminal justice system from very young ages, and I'll explore that link in a minute as well. So the other issues around this, and why Gypsy and traveller communities are so overrepresented in the system, is all about the research that's been done, and it's found that often people from these communities are more often victims of crime than perpetrators, that they're over policed compared to experiences of other communities. They're not offered alternatives to custody, so that's things such as community sentences, restorative justice, suspended sentences, those kind of things. They're not able to access support such as education, resettlement, and support when they're through the gate after custody. And again, as I've touched on already, this unwillingness to disclose, and voice is really something that we're trying to hear in this study, and we're working with the Roma support group and a charity called Hibiscus, hoping to increase the Roma voice in this issue, because what research is finding is that when it comes to people from the Roma community, they're often being identified incorrectly, so they're generally sort of being identified as the country of their origin rather than their ethnicity, so people are slipping through the system there as well. So the wider picture, and this is sort of expanding on what I've just talked about, obviously we know that people from Gypsy, Roma and traveller communities face racism and discrimination throughout their lives, and this leads to negative outcomes quite often, and also a kind of a very different and traumatized kind of reaction and opinion and feeling when it comes to interacting with the police and the law and criminal justice sort of system generally. What I've found so far, talking to people in a survey that we had out before Christmas, and now that I've started to do visits to prison, is that it is very almost normalized for people, especially very young people from these communities, to have experienced quite extreme violence in their homes, on site, during sort of police visits, and obviously this has left a massive impact on their mental health and their kind of views towards the criminal justice system and the police throughout their lives. And again, this sort of goes back to them being sort of portrayed as the perpetrators rather than the victims. You know, no one should have to experience that level of violence in their homes when they're growing up, but it seems like many people from these communities do, and there's very little support or no kind of comeback for them when they've witnessed those kind of episodes. Guilty until proven innocent. We've heard stories from people that we've spoken to about negative attitudes and sort of that stereotyping that they've received when they've gone to court. Comments that have been made along the way, you know, sort of saying, well, you're a gypsy, you must be, you know, a criminal. These kind of things have been very common and quite awful to hear, really. Percentage of young people not in education and care. This is a huge link that we're exploring. Obviously, it's been explored already. And again, a lot of the people that we're speaking to in prisons have had that not that kind of continuing education all their lives, and have a lot of the time been in care systems as well. So there's a very, very much a link there, as with you know, the same with other ethnic minorities, actually. The low literacy issue means navigating the system is hard and accessing support and education is difficult. People we've spoken to have said they sometimes don't feel that prison staff or police or anyone else in the system have a real understanding of how much low literacy there is in the community sometimes, and that makes it difficult for the people to access support. You know, in terms of confidence and wanting to step forward, then as well, it's something that they're missing out on. And lack of understanding from services. So the people that we've been speaking to in prison so far, and that includes staff, actually, the support staff, who are trying to do actually an amazing job with very little resources and support. And there is a real need out there for additional staff training, and also for people from the communities themselves, so they know what their rights are and they know what resources are out there and what they're entitled to. So what we're doing, as I said, we're particularly focusing on the younger people and their voices, and the idea is that we want to make sure their experiences and the issues they faced are fully understood by the Ministry of Justice and His Majesty's Inspectorate of Prisons, so that they can make some changes to improve their lives and make some impactful changes for the future. So we've done a literature review. We've got a community steering group made up of lots of community members from all the different types and cultures around Gypsy and Traveller and Roma communities. We've done an online survey, as I said. We're now in the situation where I'm doing a national kind of tour, if you like, of prisons, and going into prisons and visiting prisoners and holding focus groups and exploring issues with these more in-depth questions. After that, there'll be a research report and a seminar event, and then we're hoping also to put out some other media and some good practice guides for, you know, some blogs and some good practice guide for services and services. So that's the end result. And again, I've really sort of touched on this, and I'm aware that time is flying by. So yeah, these are the things that we've had so far really stand out, and the things that we'll hopefully be making some recommendations on. And obviously the important thing that we are really concentrated on and devote, kind of, you know, what really wants to happen in this report is that the community voice is really strong. So we're going to be having lots of, you know, stories, anonymized, obviously, personal accounts, you know, those things that make it really impactful rather than just statistics. So hopefully these are some of the things that we can make some good recommendations on based on what people themselves from the communities feel is lacking. That's kind of it, really. We'll stop tour through the project. There's some other links there if people want to find information. As I say, I'm sure these slides will be made available to everyone after if they're interested. And thank you very much. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now.
Sam, thank you very much. That was powerful and impactful, and we look forward to your report. And as I say, questions at the end, please. Thank you for keeping to time as well. Now I'm going to introduce Father John. Father John may be known to many of you. Father John is a Roman Catholic priest. He's also a qualified criminal lawyer, and he is the founder of Margaret Clitheroe Trust. And Father John's going to talk to us about how to approach things if we are asked to give evidence to court, or not evidence really, but a reference for court. So over to you, Father John. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Good morning, everybody. Great to be with you. There is a handout which is here, and hopefully, I think, Ivy, you may have a copy of it which you can send to everybody. So I don't, you know, I just have a, like Sam has done, a whistle-stop tour through it, but it's the details matters actually. So I would encourage you just to, it's only 2 pages, just to have a little look at. My grandmother used to say, help is only helpful if it's helpful. And really that's the top and bottom of this segment today, is to ensure that when we're asked to provide references, and I'm talking generally really, but in the context that I'm talking to you today as a priest, as a clergy person, then it's important to get it right as much as we can, because of the obvious consequences of getting it wrong. I remember as a lawyer having a case, I was representing a gentleman in the Crown Court, and his parish priest very helpfully provided a character reference, and it went along the lines that he was an exemplary family man, and you know, listed all the good things that he did for charity and all the rest of it. And it turned out he had a string of convictions for domestic violence. So the judge, rather than even, it turned against the client. In fact, I mean, it was a disaster of a reference, because it made the whole thing ridiculous. And the judge actually, if anything, sentenced him more harshly because of it. So I think it was because the judge believed that the client was misleading the priest in providing information for the reference. So do have a look at the 2 page. So the context of this is obviously court proceedings in the criminal court, or conceivably in the family court as well. And it is, as I say, to provide help to the client, and to provide the court with an insight into the person's character. And that's key, really. What this not particularly good reference did was stray into the area of fact. In other words, what the court was there to decide. And it's really important that we never do that. We never, was the phrase is, never go behind the decision of the court. The court is there to decide matters of fact. And what we're doing is providing an insight into the life of the person, the who rather than the what, in other words. So I've just listed there some pre-character reference preparation and research. I know that sounds a little bit heavy, but it's really important if our objective is to improve the lot of our client, or however, whatever relationship, parishioner, whoever it is, then it's really important you do the research. And the first bit of it is consent. You must obtain personal consent from the individual for whom you're writing the reference. And before submitting it to the court, either through their individual or their family member if they're in custody. Consent must be evidenced in writing, and that's really to protect yourself. It's really important to be absolutely sure that the individual provides consent, and it's particularly challenging, as I say, if somebody's in custody. You'll ideally need to have a visit or talk to them through their legal representative, which is the next point. You should always speak with the legal representative, usually solicitors, who have conduct of the individual's case, and they will need to have received from the client authority to talk to you about it. So that's another reason to get written consent if you can. Now, the solicitor will give you a brief outline of the case, which is important so that you avoid making stupid mistakes like the example I just gave you. It's really important that you are aware of the history, if there is any, in terms of pre-convictions and the like, to avoid those kind of pitfalls. So in terms of the structure, again, I've just given you a few pointers on that. You introduce yourself. Who are you? In other words, how long have you known the individual, and in what context? Are you the parish priest or chaplain or whatever? What's your relationship with the client? And then to the proceedings in your letter, so you know why the client is in court, and if he or she is convicted, how that he or she takes her opinion on whatever happened, is not always helpful to have. In other words, don't stray into the subject matter before the court. Really important not to go behind any decision. But if the person is remorseful or is a firm purpose of amendment for the future, by all means mention that, but just don't stray into the facts of the case. The reference should contain a real sense of knowledge of the individual that you know previously, not related to this case, but his or her conduct, family life, attitude to life generally, work, etc. You could mention all of that. And finally, in the conclusion of the structure of the reference, repeat if the individual you're making a reference for is sorry and has said so to you. If it's a sentencing exercise, that is, then it's important that you would echo that in your conclusion and reference. Finally, always gatekeep. We have a process of gatekeeping. I think a lot of organizations do. In other words, running what you've written past a trusted colleague for comment and approval. I think that's a really good safety net to avoid any mistakes. And always seek the approval of the individual you're writing the reference for before you actually send it in to the court. In fact, I don't mean that. You send it in to the legal representatives. That's my experience. That's the best route to send a character reference, is to the solicitors rather than the court direct. Always send a copy to the individual for whom you're writing the reference, just in case the solicitors forget to produce this in court. I've had that loads of times where I've provided a reference and solicitors, completely ridiculously, but forget to hand it up to the judge. So to send a copy to the individual themselves is really important. And finally, provide the reference at least 3 working days before the hearing is good practice, and I would say almost essential to guarantee it being used. I know that's extremely quick, but it's all on this 2-page handout, which I suggest that you do consult in some detail. But I'll take any questions at the end. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you very much, John. David, I see you've got your hand up. Is it something that you need to ask now for procedure, or can you save that to the end?
No. It could save to the end. The only problem is that I need to leave at 10 to 11, so I might not be here at the end.
Do you want to put your question in the chat?
It's just a very
please?
Quick one for John, and thank you, because I found that very, very helpful. However, you spoke about sort of not straying into the facts of the case. I have been in a situation where it seemed to a reference went completely sort of contrary to its intention by the person who wrote the reference, not really understanding the charges that were being faced. And so presented something there about how this person was so helpful within the church and everything like this. And the fact that he was homosexual shouldn't really have impacted on anything, but actually his charges were about sexual offences against a minor. And so the fact that he was homosexual and the fact that his victim was male didn't really matter very much. The fact was about the age of the victim. And so I'm just asking you, am I right in assuming that it is important for people to try and have some grasp of what the charges are being faced, even though you don't want to get into the arguing the evidence?
Okay, so we'll let John pick that one up.
Yes. Thank you, David, for your question. Yes, I refer you back to my two-page handout there. It's absolutely vital, in my view, that you are familiar with the charges, that you understand what they are, and indeed any pre-convictions as well, to avoid precisely what you're saying there. I mean, the case I gave you, a great family man turned out to be somebody with repeat offences for domestic violence, didn't go down well with the court. So absolutely. Back to you, Nikki. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thank you both very much. Thank you indeed. Now we've got Reverend Sean Page, and Sean's going to talk to us a little bit about his experience. Sean is both prison chaplain and he's also chaplain to Gypsy Roma traveller communities in Manchester. Sean, are you there?
I am indeed. Am I?
We can only see a photo of you.
All right. I don't know how to get past that because I've
Never
nothing
mind,
else.
just speak.
Right, hang on. Share, start video.
That's it.
Any better? Oh yeah, I can see myself there. Is that all right? Hello? No,
We
I've
can
lost
see you.
something.
Yeah,
Hello,
we can
Sean.
see you.
We can see you and we can hear you.
You can see me and you can hear me. Well, that's as good as it gets. Okay, well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for asking me to come on this. As I say, my take is very much an experiential one. My, if you like, involvement with people from traveling communities, from the accent, you'll know I'm Irish. I grew up in the west of Ireland. I served as 12 years as a RC priest in Sligo. There was quite a large, or probably still is, large Irish traveller community there. I didn't really go out to seek them as travellers. It was just that as people who come to the parish as one-to-ones, the big thing was preparing the children for confession and communion in that context. I got to know a lot of them, and that led to some insight. Now, coming over here to the UK, it was through being a prison chaplain that I met traveling people. And what I found was that I work in two prisoners. I work in Garth and I work in Manchester. HMP Manchester is the main one. And I do a day in Garth. There are traveling folk in both of them. But I found, if you like, that the Garth group are more visible. So from estate to estate, it can vary. Practical stuff. Let's say, and this is a big thing, let's say I'm talking about gentlemen because it's all males that I deal with. A gentleman or a fellow wants to go to his uncle's funeral. Now, this is a big thing across as well, who goes where. And he says, well, my dad wasn't there from when I was little. My uncle brought me up. He was the head of the family. So you go to the uncle to try and trace that down, and there isn't a paper trail. There's no way of proving loco parentis, and if there isn't a paper trail, God bless the prison, like the government. If it's not written down, it doesn't exist, and you're into a minefield. Now, some of it is, prisoners will ask to go to everybody's funeral. So there has to be a kind of a logical way of policing it, for want of a better word. So all that kind of stuff does bring barriers, and certainly procedures need looking at. In general as well, and this is across the board rather than just prison, getting married. If a traveling person wants to get married in the community and they want to do it in church, such as RC or Church of England, then you're into a minefield of prove a connection to the parish and all this kind of stuff. So, I mean, how on earth can that be done when a person doesn't necessarily live in one location? There's also the issue of, birth certs and all that kind of stuff not being available. But from my point of view, and what I would encourage, is that the prison chaplain community get involved and get to know the traveling needs better. It's all about breaking down barriers. It's all about being there for the people. And for me, it's a one-to-one person. Oh, this is a traveler. This is a traveler group. Maybe it is. But maybe it's John Smith that I'm standing in front of. And no matter what shape and form John Smith is, he's the man I need to deal with in that context. So the big thing I would push is for greater awareness by chaplains and a commitment from chaplains to be aware of traveling people's needs, and also connections, perhaps making links with services on the outside. I heard Through the Gate or some of these ones. It's important that we're aware of what the provision is on the outside and be able to make those links.
Thank you very much. That's very pearls of wisdom from experience. Please keep questions again to the end. Later we'll have James Ridge speaking to us. James Ridge, the Venerable James Ridge, is the Chaplain General. He's just had to pop out for another meeting, but he will be back to speak to us about 11 o'clock. So now I'd like to pass over to Fiona Mullen and Sadie Montague, and they are picking up really quite nicely, Sean, on some of what you're saying. They're going to speak to us about Irish chaplaincy and some of the things that Irish chaplaincy are trying to do to help support people from the communities while they're in prison.
Okay, morning everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm Fiona Mullen and I work for the Traveller Equality Project, which is part of Irish chaplaincy. So I'll just give you a brief overview of our work and what we do. So we work with travellers and gypsies who are involved in the criminal justice system. We work in partnership with HMPPS to provide resources specifically for this group, advocacy, and we've done quite a bit of staff training with prison officers. We facilitate what they call GRT groups in prisons in England and Wales. So basically it's a focus group. Travellers, gypsies, Roma all come together so they can talk about any issues that they may be having in the prison. If they need us to advocate for them within the prison or outside, we will do. And at the moment, we're working in partnership with London Probation to support GRT POP. Now, POP means people on probation. So basically, it's travellers or gypsies who are released on licence or under a suspended sentence order. But basically, they have to be released to London Probation for us to work with them under that particular project. Next slide, please, Ivy. Okay, so just a bit of background. English gypsies, and I'm sure everyone knows this, and Irish travellers recognised as distinct ethnic minority groups in law, granted the full protection of the Equalities Act 2010. This is something that we tend to have to remind a lot of probation staff and prison staff about, that they have actually the full protection of the Equalities Act. So this is a quote from Sir Trevor Phillips. It's quite an old quote. Discrimination against gypsies and travellers appears to be a respectable form of racism. And then more recently, death threats are a way of life. So this is a quote from an Irish traveller, female in Birmingham. And gypsies, Irish travellers and Muslims are the least liked people in the UK. This was a survey done by Birmingham University and YouGov in 2022. So really what we're trying to show there is not a lot has changed for this particular group in terms of racism and discrimination. I think if anything, it's probably got worse. Next slide, please. Yeah, so just opinion polls here in England and in Ireland have regularly described this group as the group they dislike most in society. So that survey that I mentioned, nearly half of people said that this was the group they viewed most negatively. And just for that survey was done on professional people, middle-class professionals, so people who are in positions like police, teachers, social workers, which obviously makes it more worrying because they are in positions of power in society, but they felt quite comfortable to express these views. So like another speaker said, huge overrepresentation in the criminal justice system. Women account for 0.1% of the general population, but 6% of the prison population. And again, the Youth Justice Estate, these statistics we have, 9% of the prison population in youth justice, 0.1% of the general population. And government research reveals disproportionately high levels of poverty, low literacy levels, poor school attainment, substance misuse, poor mental health, the highest suicide rate of all ethnic groups, and so significantly worse life chances than the rest of society. The school to prison pipeline most severely affects GRT and Black Caribbean children, with Gypsy Roma children being excluded from school at the rate of 21%, and Irish traveller children at a rate of over 14%. So these are the highest school exclusion rates across all school years. And just to kind of bring things more up to date, this is a recent case, February of this year, where an Irish traveller tried to book a pub for a christening. He was refused. Basically, the only reason was because he was a traveller. But he was backed by the Equality and Human Rights Commission, and the case was settled. But they did not admit liability. Next slide, please. So this is a video which I hope will play. It's very short. It's only 3 minutes long. It's an Irish traveller female talking about the amount of suicide she has experienced in her family.
We can't hear it.
Share your screen, you have to allow sound.
Sorry, everyone. It was playing yesterday and this morning, so I'm just trying to do some tech.
Thank you, Ivy. Sorry about this.
Me and Fiona spent yesterday on it and it did play, so we don't know why it's not playing now.
If you stop sharing the screen and then restart it and just make sure you've got it the box ticked to optimize for video.
I'm just going to try it now. I just did a little press.
My second little cousin Marlene, she was 13.
It's coming through.
I think that was working, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Great.
Suella was my sister-in-law. She was 32 and she died by suicide. My brother John was 34. He died by suicide. My brother Timmy was 38. He died through suicide. My cousin Paul was in his 30s. He died through suicide. My cousin Terry was 27. He died through suicide. My second little cousin Marlene, she was 13. She died through suicide.
And it does have an impact on your mental health. It's trying to pass as a member of the settled population, so you're not being your true, authentic self. That mentally is very, very difficult. You know, you're living two separate lives, and no one can maintain that.
Yeah, they deliberately put that wall around us to fence travellers in completely, away from society, out of sight and out of mind.
So if you and your husband or one of your children wanted to go out for, I don't know, a cup of tea or a meal, would you have to sort of pick where you went to know that you went
definitely. And I'd have to have a relationship with that service to be able to book it, and that they'd know me and my family. You just couldn't randomly say I'm thirsty or I'm hungry and I need to go and get something to eat. It doesn't work like that for travellers.
Because you couldn't guarantee that the person
would... Oh no, you're just going to be stopped.
Like I'm getting married to a settled person. You know, she's from the settled community, she's not a traveller. When we first started going out, and me, her and my mother went to a shop in Letterkenny, and the security man was walking behind us, very subtly kind of watching us, what we were doing, and we were speaking. And in a sense, me and my mother was oblivious, but my partner couldn't believe this. Sometimes I get that reality check from her to saying, this is not right.
Yeah.
You know, these things are not normal. They didn't happen in her life. So it is a real life consequence of travellers' lives. We live in the shadows of racism, discrimination and oppression daily. Now, I'll get you sorted out.
No, you can put a cat into a dog box, but it's always going to be a cat. So you can put us into houses and a similar house, but we're always going to be Indigenous people. That runs through our blood. We're proud and we're dignified people. We have solutions and we want you to listen to us. We don't want to waste any taxpayers' money. We're not in it for money. We're in it to stay alive and to keep our young kids alive.
Okay, thanks, Ivy. Yeah, so just to kind of maybe try and end on a more positive note, this is Eileen Flynn. She's an Irish traveller. She made history in Ireland because she got elected to the Senate, which in Ireland is kind of like the House of Lords here. So she made history, grew up on a traveller site in Dublin, one of 8 children. So just trying to present a more positive image. And last slide, I think it is, please, Ivy. Just what we can offer, basically what we do. So we work with travellers and gypsies. They can either be in custody or in the community on licence. They have to be under London probation. We provide resources like posters, magazines, easy reader books to both community groups, prisons, probation officers. The easy reader books are culturally specific for travellers and gypsies. And at the moment, we're trying to roll these out to all probation officers in London. So we're regular visits to London and national prisons, and we facilitate GRT forums for gypsies and travellers in custody. So like I said, it gives them an opportunity to come together as a group within the prison, discuss any problems, issues they're experiencing, and we can then advocate for them if necessary. So for our clients on probation, when they get released from prison, ideally before, we help them with ID documents, which are crucial to claim benefits, anything like that. A release grant for leaving prisons. We can make referrals for mental health support, support with benefits, and just general mentoring and support to navigate probation and basically keep to the terms of their license and avoid recall to prison, because the rates of recall for this group are particularly high. We deliver regular briefings to probation staff on GRT culture, history, and the discrimination they face. So the aim is just to educate probation staff on, the issues that travellers and gypsies face. And we make recommendations to probation staff on best practice for working in this group, with this group. And we can also assist probation officers when writing pre-sentence reports for this group. So it helps the person involved understand and engage more with the process. And also we're trying to avoid any bias against travellers and gypsies, because there was found to be a lot of bias in pre-sentence reports against this group. And that's it. Thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you very much. Very interesting, a lot of content there, and fixing very well with other people. Now, as I said, James Ridge, I think, is back to speak to us at 11, so I think we're a little bit ahead of time, are we, Ivy?
Yes, we are. So we can take some questions now if there's any.
And is it possible to screen share John's document? Have we got that, so people can have a look at that if they want to?
Not to hand, but I can try and find it. So maybe we start with any questions or observations.
Hello, can you hear me there?
Yes, we can. If everybody goes mute off, we can talk to each other for a bit.
Oh, that's great. Let me see. Well, I was really fascinated by that last presentation and the reference to the amount of, suicidal ideation, all that. In prison, self-harm and attempted suicide is massive. And it's not just with traveling folk, it's with prisoners in general. Again, I'm talking of the male state. And what sometimes they do is they will self-harm in order to get attention, because the perception is that there's no advocacy, there's no continuity, there's no way of trusting anybody, nobody knows where they stand. Along with the the staffing issues in prison at the moment, the high turnover, the amount of younger, inexperienced staff, and you add it up, and it's a minefield for everyone. But as a chaplain in Manchester, listening to all of this and delighted in it, what I need is, you know, the professional support and backup so that I can promote, you know, the lot of travellers, but people in general as well. And what I am trying to do in Manchester is make links so that, let's say, new vicars, so to speak, new priests, whatever, in training, that they can perhaps get placements with places like Irish Community Care as a general introduction. And also in Church of England, we've got a thing called IME, which is a developmental in-service training, so to speak, for new vicars in parishes and going into public ministry. And I would also like to see some sort of a module to be included in that training. And we're working for that in Manchester. And of course, if somebody said, one of the speakers say about visiting prisons, I'm sure a visit to Manchester would be most welcome and perhaps can be set up. But it's for me as a person, I'm kind of going around like a dog sniffing at corners. So I need the professional backup and the guidance, you know, to make what I'm trying to do more clear and accessible. Because I find I'm just like this, I'm just talking in circles. But, you know, the will is out. Oh, the other thing too is very quickly Appleby and stopping places. I know Manchester is intending to launch traveller-friendly churches. And I think that's our big link, to promote that, to try and break down barriers with the parishes, with the people. Because, you know, I've seen from one experience, it wasn't a traveller, but it was an SO, a sexual offender back in the community. He wanted to go to, there was an RC, he wanted to go to Mass, but the poor old priest, bless his socks, he was scared stiff. You know, and we went through.
Okay, Sean, I think you're covering lots of issues, and we'll just give people a chance to respond to you or to anything else. Karen, you've got your hand up there.
I just want to introduce myself, really, and just to say if there's anything I can do to help. I am a Romany gypsy based in Dorset, and I've just started working. There's a project with the Dorset charity Cushy Bock and the Citizens Advice Bureau. We have got a couple of prisons actually in the Dorset area. So just to say that I am available in the Dorset area if anybody needs any help for people being released or to help them with benefits and things like that. Just to say that I am out here. I can put my details on, but it's very interesting to listen. So
thank you very much.
Just to say that.
Thank you very much, Karen. Sean, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sure people want to respond, because I'm sure what you're saying, people will echo the difficulties in training, in supporting, and in understanding. And I guess that's what we're all trying to do, is work together to improve things. And I'd like to thank you all very much for being here today and sharing your stories and your experiences. Anybody else got another question or comment?
Just to reflect on Sean's words about IME training, because I'm a Church of England vicar, so every single trainee vicar goes through IME when they're at the curate stage. I think that's a fantastic idea to bring some teaching on GRT culture to that, because I just think a lot of people have absolutely no idea what struggles people face. I spoke at our local deanery synod last week, and it was just a 10-minute presentation, but it was so well received and people were genuinely interested in, you know, but I think for a lot of people, they just never really thought about this before. So I think to go to the stage where people are still training before they go out into parishes, they would then go, you would hope that at least some of them would then go into parishes with a much more positive view of if they have travellers in their area, they'd be much more likely to think, okay, well, let's try and engage. So I think, and especially because the Church of England has made so many kind of promises from the top, to build on that and to say, okay, what does that look like in terms of clergy training, then I think that would be a really good move.
Thank you, Becca. Andrew, you're a Methodist. I should, if you don't mind me outing you for want of a better expression. so we're being truly ecumenical here, with Methodist, Roman Catholics and Anglicans and nonconformist colleagues and friends. Is there anything you want to comment on that?
I mean, I think for the Methodist Church, I mean, I'm the only one really. I had some conversations at our Methodist conference, which is our national conference last year, around some of the issues around Gypsy traveller and Roma communities, and there's a general sense of kind of surprise because it's something that really the Methodist Church hasn't really focused on a lot at all, and I think that's partly to do with. I think historically we haven't had a huge link with those communities, which is a bit strange actually, because in many ways our type of ministry is very much itinerant. So it's the way in which we think about our lives is kind of has a lot of similarities. The one of the things has been, though, I've had a number of conversations with people about what can be done, and so as people have said around the stopping places and things, I'm hoping to get something to this conference about that. But I'll be quite interested actually in encountering, maybe having conversations with people further around visiting people, particularly in the criminal justice system. And I think there was an offer from Manchester, which isn't too far away from here. But those conversations I think are really important for me in particular, because as I'm trying to navigate this space, I'm kind of starting from basically just being the minister, and that will be where the fair takes place. It's not that's where my starting point, and so there's a lot of new things where I'm trying to find out, and so I'm not surprised by some of the statistics, but it's still shocking to hear a lot of the statistics that are heard. And there's a huge amount of, in the local community, there's a huge amount of resistance towards these communities, and the fair and things that go on there. And I am struck, given the amount of time that's given to things like equality, diversity, inclusion programs now within churches, in businesses, in all these kind of things, that this is missed out. I'm struck by why that is, and as much as I kind of look into it and I've thought about it, there does seem to be something inherently, obviously historical there, but there's this kind of sense that people from the Gypsy communities, the travel communities, people have said are inherently saying something, are doing things that are, against the law and things. And I'm not saying that might not be true in many cases or some cases, but the question for me is why? What's the reasons behind, some of the things where people feel ostracized from the community or don't feel included? I do think there's an impact in terms of how we treat people, has a major impact on the way in which people integrate into society in many ways. And if we're expecting people to assimilate into society, as the person said, I think that's also wrong. We've got to somehow find a way for our communities to recognize the diversity and celebrate it, rather than being afraid of it.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Yes, integration and assimilation, not at all the same thing, are they? And one thing struck me, Sam, was the youth, the impact on young people. And we've got to get in early and improve things for them. And 9% of the youth population from Gypsy Roma traveller. If we take our eye off the ball and we don't think about these young people, we're just building up more and more problems and more sadnesses, aren't we? So thank you all. We're almost at 11 now. I don't know what's happened in the chat. Is anything gone through in the chat or anything been shared?
Nothing in the chat, but I can share Father John's reference if everyone wants to see that on screen.
Thank you, Ivy.
just let me all know that you can see it.
Yep.
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 Are you going to slide down it, Ivy, so that we can gradually read through it?
Ivy, is there any chance of emailing it to people or not? Is there? Or is it the system won't do that? No?
I can email it after to everyone.
That's probably the...
If I flip too many screens now, my laptop starts freezing, so I'm trying to be careful.
No. It might be easier just to email it if...
Yeah, and it will be available. We're going to upload it on our site under resources. It'll also be on, available
okay,
through
sorry, I didn't
Margaret
know that.
Clitheroe Trust. No, we'll do both. Email it to people, put it up on resources, and I know you can get it through Margaret Clitheroe Trust as well. And if you don't know about Margaret Clitheroe Trust, do have a look. It's John, remarkable organisation that John founded.
And Sam, Nikki, it wasn't just me, bless you.
Okay,
Yeah.
you and Sam then. Yeah. There's also a report on our website, a previous report from Irish Chaplaincy that you're all welcome to have a look at. I think there'll be a new report out soon. Okay, so we're about 11 o'clock now. Has everybody had sight of that now? Yeah.
Yes,
Good.
thank you.
So do we have the Venerable James Ridge back with us? Do we have Mark Grasby?
I don't think so.
Okay.
They did say 11, so we are 4 minutes short.
Are we okay? I think I set my watch a bit fast to help keep us on time a little bit. So sorry about that, folks. Do carry on.
Just quickly, if you can hear me, is there any physical, practical support I can get to speak to Manchester Diocese, the formation director, about putting something together for the IP?
Happy to come and meet and talk.
I think it would be good because there's a new director of formation, the new man in charge of education. I'll pass some details and all of that, but I would like to see something practical happening.
Mm-hmm. Very happy to talk to you about that, Sean, or to set something up, or for people to come and meet, or a focus group to be formed, because there'll be if you can sort it out for Manchester.
I think so.
It won't be too dissimilar for other dioceses, will
No,
it?
it won't. And we could maybe push it as a pilot. Maybe there might be some funding in it or something. But what I need is the more professional backup to do what I'm talking about.
Mm.
Nikki, I believe James is back in the room.
Okay. Good morning.
Hello. Yes, I'm here.
Good morning. So we have Archdeacon James Ridge with us, and James, you are the Chaplain General for His Majesty's Prison and Probation Service. Yes?
Indeed I am. That's correct, yes.
So James, welcome, and it's over to you. You have the floor.
Right, well, thank you very much. It's good to be here. Thank you for your invitation. I've been asked to talk a bit about prison chaplaincy generally and what chaplaincies are involved in, and also how that relates to Gypsy, Roma, traveller communities. I noticed you already heard quite a bit from Father Sean from his work in Manchester and Garth. I noticed also, and I don't know if she's had a chance to speak, but we may have the inimitable Sister Philomena Purcell on the call. If that is who it is, then Sister Philomena taught me just about everything I know about chaplaincy, and you're probably far better listening to her than you are to me. But anyway, chaplaincy in general, I look after around 1,300 chaplains across 122 prisons in England and Wales. I'm sometimes asked, when did chaplaincy start getting involved in prisons? And my response is usually, well, I think it was in the 11th century when the Bishop of Winchester opened the first ever prison. But from the very outset, the faith has been at the heart of our prisons. We're now in a position where We operate in a multi-faith chaplaincy setting. We look after 22 different faith and belief groups across our prison. We have chaplains of the vast majority of those who work alongside one another in teams, both inside the prison, but also looking out into the community, which is something we're being asked to do more and more, to think about how we care for people as they leave prison, as they move into approved premises, into community accommodation and community supervision. And that, of course, is entirely relevant to what we're talking about today, because there are particular challenges around that for our GRT community, and how community supervision and that all that's part of the probation service affects those people. Chaplains, of course, are not just there for faith and pastoral care provision. We're also in charge of much of the bereavement process within prisons. And when prisoners have loved ones who are seriously ill and who die, it's chaplains who are there not just to care for those involved, but also to engage the practical steps around attendance at funerals. And again, over the years, I've engaged with a number of travelling communities, and particularly also around deaths in custody. When someone dies in our care, going out to those communities to meet with them and break that news, but also work out how we facilitate what happens next in terms of the funeral process. We're also there to care for staff. It's really important to remember that chaplains are there to care for staff, and that's something that I underline all the time. That's a vital part of our work. And chaplains provide that sort of professional advice service to governors and the senior management team on matters of faith and belief. One of the lines that chaplains always walk is the interplay between cultural and religious process, and that again is very much on the table as we think about those in our care who are from GRT communities. Is to what extent is who they are, the identity that they have, the way in which they express that, to what extent is that a cultural thing? To what extent is that a religious thing? And it's very hard to unpick that sometimes. And it's not just travellers who have that issue, of course. We work with, for example, our Rastafari friends who have a very similar close-knit relationship between religion and culture, and we have to think about what we provide. But clearly that pastoral duty is there to make sure that they're able to live the fullest possible life while they're in custody. Travellers do participate regularly in worship. Large number, of course, as you will have already heard from others, and particularly from Father Sean, are Roman Catholic. And so our Roman Catholic masses in prison often have quite a good attendance from travellers. That sometimes requires careful managing. It often requires careful managing when there are other communities there as well, particularly our Eastern Europeans, which is another large part of our Roman Catholic population. And managing how those two communities engage with one another can sometimes be tricky. In terms of links between in prison and outside in the community, the relationship between chaplaincy on the inside and church on the outside is well established. As we know, there's often a suspicion of engaging with civil authorities, and that suspicion isn't so much in evidence when we talk about engaging with the church, and that can be a really useful way of meeting with people from travelling communities. A lot of prison chaplains, you'd have heard from Father Sean and from others on the call, I'm sure, as Sister Philomena being a good example. Prison chaplains often have an additional role as a chaplain to the travelling communities, or at least good points of contact with parish clergy who fulfil this role. But chaplains are always a good point of contact for inside prison. If those of you working with travellers on the outside want to have that point of contact through the chaplaincy, is always a good way to do that. In preparation for this, I spoke to the GRT lead for HMPPS, who was hoping to join the call today, sadly has been unable to do so. Just to see what was happening in terms of faith and belief so far, in terms of the way HMPPS is engaging with its GRT prisoners. So far, very little has been done in terms of faith, but they are willing to learn. They are keen to engage, and I'd be very happy to be a part of that. The only other thing I was going to mention was my own personal experience of working with travellers in terms of the events that chaplaincies have organised. But Father Sean may have covered this. I had to drop out during what he was saying in terms of events in chaplaincies where we've seen music and food and cultural events hosted by chaplaincy, and those have been really successful, joyful and celebratory events which enable people to sort of own their identity in a positive way and not in the sort of negative way in which it's often portrayed. I'm going to stop there, I think, because I think I've covered most of what I wanted to say. I'm happy to pick up some questions later on at the end, but as I had to drop out, I've missed some of what others have said, and I don't want to recover old ground.
Thank you very much, James. I'm not on mute, am I?
No.
No. Good. Well, we are sorry that Mark Grasby can't be with us, but thank you for sharing with us some of what he might have said, and that gives us a bit more time. We did have a little bit of time earlier to share and to ask questions and to talk, but we have that time now, and it doesn't matter if we decide to end the call a little bit earlier. So open forum.
Just a very quick one, please, if I may, very quick, for James while he's in the room, so to speak. Good to see you. I know we have an Anglican conference coming up, but could we at some stage in the different conferences or themes include something about Gypsy traveller experiences or whatever learning in the prison system?
I will certainly put that to the Faith and Belief Advisors. The conferences that we're running this year are for all the different faith and belief groups, and so they're organised by our Faith and Belief Advisors. But the Faith and Belief Advisors come together in a forum once every couple of months or so, which I chair. I will certainly put that to them. If not, we can certainly do.
Encourage chaplains to encourage placements or visits to prisons where possible. I'm thinking particularly Cat Cs or Cat Ds, because it could be difficult as you go up the line.
Yes, we're very open to that, and I'm more than happy to organise that through my office, Sean. So if people want to get in touch with me, I can then be in touch with the team in their local prison. It shouldn't be a problem, even with our Cat As. It shouldn't be too much of a problem to arrange those visits. So yeah, wherever people are, I'm sure that's something that we can organise.
I think we promote it generally.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we still have somebody here from? I know Fiona Mullen had to leave, and she did a very good presentation earlier from Irish Chaplaincy. Do we still have Sadie? Yeah, Sadie, is there anything, because James, I think, was picking up things that you might want to respond to?
I don't especially, so if anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to elaborate on Fiona's presentation.
Okay, thank you. Becca?
Yeah, I was just wondering where you're based.
So we're based in London. Our office is in London, and at the moment our probation project is just with London probation, but our prison work is nationwide.
Okay. I thought, because there was some mention of London on the presentation, that's why I asked, because I'm based in East London, but we've just started a project across Chelmsford and London Diocese to encourage churches to engage more with the Gypsy Roma traveller communities in their area. So one of the things is just to literally just find out where people are. So I'll probably be making contact with you.
Yeah, it'd be great.
And James, I'm sure you know of Irish Chaplaincy, but they were talking about a lot of resources and facilitating forums in prisons and educating staff. So you mentioned that was something you were keen to pick up on, and maybe after this call there could be some links made there.
I'd be very happy to renew that conversation. It's been some while since I've had contact with them, so you're very happy to renew that conversation.
Philomena, are you there?
Yes.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Are you going to let us see you or not?
Well, what do I do?
You just press, there's a little button at the top.
Is that it?
Hey, we can see you now.
Yeah,
Hello.
you can see me now. You can
Hello,
see I have seen the light. I'm not wearing glasses. So so all I can say is working for 21 years in Chelmsford Prison was wonderful. I met my own people there. Because where I grew up in Ireland, in a rural place, the travellers were always coming and going. And because I come from a large family, when they came, we would sit down at the table with them. We brought the forms and tables outside, and we had a party. For what, and when I came to Chelmsford Prison and meeting travellers who they had no voice, the way they spoke, they all spoke with a very, very strong Irish accent, mostly because they live in a very close community. So coming to prison was so alien to them. And I used to also go to the visits, if the travellers were there, they say, come and see my family. And they were so happy that somebody understood them. And they used to think, oh, you'll do this, you'll do that. And just all you have to do is go gently, walk slowly, and listen. There are people, all the Roma, Gypsy, and travellers, there are people, they need to be recognised. And it takes me back to my own days when I went to college. I had a severe Irish accent. It's improved just a little. And when we introduced ourselves at the meeting, and somebody said, oh, my mother's Irish, my grandfather's Irish, and all this. So I felt so at home, and I felt there's nothing wrong with me. I'm just normal or semi-normal. And I worked in a school in Dagenham. I loved it. I loved and Romford and places like that. So I met people who were on the outside. They weren't travellers, but lots of people were on the outside. So we're all equal. We're all lovely people. And we love people. And travellers love to be around. They love fun. They love music. You go on the site and they'll have music. You can hear Irish music when I go to Dale Farm. And sadly, the Dale Farm invasion was not a success. It wasn't a success for anybody. But I've retired now, and now that my eyesight has been seen to, I can see very clearly. I can see into the future that you are all good people and you're all doing something that is helping the less able, the less vocal. There are people and they will be part of us in the future. So, and we are very open to people, and that is what we will continue. And I'm so pleased, Nikki, with this lovely thing today. I have told the chaplains in Chelmsford Prison that it would be recorded, because I know Helen will be in and Mel today. So they will get all this information, because they are carrying on wonderfully the Roma, Gypsy and Travellers forums we have regularly in Chelmsford Prison. Anyway, I think I've said enough by now.
Thank you, Philomena. It's always good to listen to you. You always encourage us greatly. And Caroline and Sam, do you want to say anything?
No.
No.
It's been really interesting.
Sorry, one at a time, maybe.
So just say it's been really, really interesting.
Okay, great.
Yeah, just to echo that, it's been interesting, and I've got a couple of really good contacts to follow up with. So yeah, thank you for inviting me to speak today.
No, thank you very much for your contributions. Karen, do you want to say anything else? No. Okay, so I just want to say thank you all hugely for all that you do and for all that you've done and for being here today and for sharing. Oh, Karen, there you are.
Yeah, I'm here.
Really,
Sorry.
really
Yeah,
give you the
just
last word as someone
yeah,
from the
sorry,
community.
I clicked the wrong button. Yeah, no,
That's
just
okay.
to say that it's been very, very interesting and got some good contacts. And if anybody gets anybody in the Dorset area, I can help. We've got a good team here and we're doing everything to help our people. And that's it, really.
Okay, so thank you all once more again for taking part and sharing of your expertise and just being here and encouraging each other. I think we're going to finish early, which is wonderful. Okay.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you very much.
all right. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.